Welcome to the CPTM Smart Partners Hub, and welcome to Keith Suter, our smart partner who annually is trying to join us at our think tanking in London, but also to the annual general meeting. And also, what is even more important, he's following us during the year and from time to time intervening in case we forgot something or we didn't communicate in the right way. But Keith, this year was a very particular, special moment, the fact that you joined us. It has coincided with the annual conference of the Club of Rome next week, where we'll go, both of us. But the fact that you are able to join us at this Tuesday on 31st of October at the both the think tanking and the last part of the rolling panel, special rolling panel, was very important because of three main factors. One, there is not only emerging, but a kind of very rapid development in the field of digital landscape, which in fact one could follow it through all the various networks we have in the movement. But what you cannot follow is the impact that this digital landscape makes on the whole integrative type of fabric of a country, be it Lesotho, UK, Australia, or so that is what one cannot follow. So you can't necessarily follow the emergence because things are happening too quick. You see, in the last 2 years, people are talking about disruptive this, disruptive that, but actually is not a very useful articulation of what is taking place, because what is taking place is almost viral, almost biological, that there is an organic development as it happens, which you don't even realize how it spreads. So the impact of positive and otherwise of data and data technologies and everything associated with that does not wait, cannot wait. And in fact, those particular parts of a society or global community whom we are expecting to alert us is the media, is those involved in media. But the question is more and more, what is media? And how does media comes in this spontaneous? So it's not necessarily emergent, we are experiencing at the same time risk, spontaneity, and reaction. So there is a very interesting time we are living. So that is the reason why, in addition to our in the smart partnership movement in CPTM, in addition to being very well known for creating a fabric of a smart partnership type of a dialogue at the country and the Commonwealth and so on level, and bringing in the latest developments and the latest impacts of those developments, the dialogue is not enough. The think tanking became more and more relevant about 4 or 5 years ago due to this thing that is taking place. But even think tanking is not enough. So for that reason, we try to experiment with what is called a panel. But the panel for the smart partnership, which believes in cooperation and all the rest of it, the panel is exclusive. Once you say panel, some people are part of the panel, and it's a one-off panel. Well, what we're talking about is spotting signals for tomorrow, today, but it's like now, as they happened, rooted in real time and real people, but you have to spot them ongoingly.
Sure.
And with everyone has to feel is part of a panel. So the word panel is not the right word. So we thought that probably you could, now having experienced being part of our experiment, maybe you could kind of go a bit further into what words, or how could we articulate this need for spotting signals as it happens, rolling panel when everybody's part of it. How do you do that?
Well, I do it.
We're trying to use these panels.
Well, you're using the panels. What I do is, of course, a series of presentations and workshops, and then gendering the discussion there. So everybody is a member of a panel if you've got a small enough workshop, and you get people to really get outside their comfort zone. And to think about the prospects of changes. For example, I did a recent project on the future of driverless cars. As you know, at our Club of Rome meeting in Mexico, the prediction was made that they were 15 years away. So that means they're only 12 years away. And already laws are being changed to accommodate driverless vehicles. Now, what I'm encouraging Australians to do is to think through what that means for having driverless vehicles and driverless trucks. Driverless trucks would be a way of displacing a lot of people who make money driving trucks. They don't necessarily have fancy university degrees, but they can still earn a good living by driving trucks. They're going to go in 12 years' time.
Already happened in the US on motorways.
Yes, that's right.
So
and you get the trucks to go in a convoy, a platoon.
And then they changed and picked up a non-motorway.
That's
just
right.
incredible.
So we've really got to be thinking this. Now, what is interesting is that when I give...
So it's like today, tomorrow.
Exactly.
It's not.
So when I give the talks, I have politicians in the audience, and they will say to me privately, yes, I agree with what you're saying, but I can't talk to my voters about that. Because the voters in Australia are worried about immediate issues. Trivial, in my view, trivial issues.
But this was the greatest demonstration of exactly what we had Monday and Tuesday and Sunday. You were not here.
And it was good to have the politicians here.
Yes,
but the problem is, are they going to be willing...
I'm not interested in data. I'm not interested in how you do it. I'm interested in giving 3,000 jobs. In the clay factory. I mean, how...
We've got such a major...
How do you deal with that?
A major task ahead of us.
At communication.
Well, it's interesting because
that's what it is.
Well, yes, but let me just say that China doesn't have that problem because it doesn't have proper elections. The Chinese government say this is what we're going to do. We're going to build highways everywhere, high-speed railways. Not necessarily very well, but they build them. They don't worry too much about the safety, but they build them. Whereas in Australia, we have difficulty even being able to create a second Sydney airport.
Because you have to go through
all those...
That's it.
So it is very interesting. So I find it, at a time when people are despairing about politics in the Western world, the number of people I come across saying, if only we could have a President Xi running our country at the moment.
There was, you remember I mentioned a Chinese economist who is coming up with a new kind of economics, centralized planning plus the hybrid type of economics, which supports all the last 2 weeks new she's kind of But
so you want me to talk about the media. Let me get the 4 points I made at our function here on Tuesday. One is that we have moved from broadcasting to narrowcasting. So broadcasting is when you have a small number of stations transmitting to a large number of people. We've moved from that to narrowcasting, which is where we have a large number of stations transmitting to a small number of people. And it's very specialised broadcasting. So if somebody tells me what radio station they listen to, I know a lot about them. Because we have a variety of radio stations, but they're all going for niche markets. So that's our first problem. It's very difficult to communicate with the large number of people because there are so few national events outside of sport in order to communicate. Second problem we've got is the international telecommunications revolution, in the sense that people can broadcast their own news. and they can upload their information to YouTube. So every hour, 7,000 hours of video get uploaded onto YouTube. And it's an amazing, and well, as we're doing here, you've got your own YouTube channel. So we are doing that same sort of thing. So it means, therefore, people are creating their own news. Ours, of course, is high standard, but you've got others who are putting all sorts of fake news, the word of the year, all sorts of fake news down. Third problem, or third worry I've got, is the end of newspapers, effectively. That's, by the way, a great example of people being unwilling to think about the unthinkable. There's a very famous case study of the Fairfax newspaper dynasty, which publishes the Melbourne Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. It is the oldest newspaper dynasty in the English-speaking world. And they commissioned a study on what IT will do to newspapers. And the person who produced the study, Eric Beecher, heard that when the board of Fairfax received the report, they said, there will always be a need for newspapers. All the copies of his warning report were called back in and pulped. They were never circulated. And yet, if anything, his warnings turned out to be even more cautious than what has happened. So what's interesting is that here you have a series of newspapers with information technology pages and journalists, etc. But nobody at the board asked, what does all this mean for our newspaper model? Yeah,
incredible.
It is quite incredible. People being unwilling to think about the unthinkable.
Actually,
and then the fourth point I made is my concern about the rise of what is called the narcissist society. In other words, you may go to restaurants and you'll notice that people are taking selfies of themselves and the food. So it's a world that's becoming increasingly narrow, self-absorbed, self-focused. And again, it means that you're not paying attention to the wider issues that we are trying to raise through CPTM.
No, but this is a major problem. How do you raise the awareness that one thing connects to another? You take a selfie, but maybe by doing that, you stimulate something else. But you're not aware of that.
My own feeling is that you do not think your way through to a new way of living. You live your way through to a new way of thinking. So the warning that I'm giving organisations is that you must stand ready for dramatic change. So let's take climate change. Many people are denying that, particularly in Australia and the United States. But then once we start to see a bit of Florida washed away, or Queensland, suddenly there'll be this demand for action. So in other words, it's no good trying to be too rational when you're talking to people. You've really got to wait for them to be changed by their own experiences and then suddenly say, yes, there is a problem with climate change. What are you going to do about it? And that is your window of opportunity. But you've got to have your plans in place to cope with that window of opportunity.
Well, I mean, that is in a way what we're trying to do with these signals for tomorrow, whatever word we may use. Because if you are making people aware and probably also alert central banks and standards and whoever that this is so more operative, then when it happens, it happens in relation to a digital coin or whatever, there is a way to spontaneously be prepared to do something about it.
And we must be willing to have organisations, have departments that deal with contingencies. In other words, my worry has been that we have become so focused on the immediate bottom line that we've lost a lot of the institutional memory within organisations and government departments. What we need is to have people who are, to use my phrase, thinking about the unthinkable and having the plans in place for when the dramatic changes occur. In the Australian context, I keep warning my audiences, the time of greatest danger comes at the time of greatest success. In other words, that Australia has now gone ahead with the longest continuous period of economic growth in Western history. No recession, even at the time when other countries were in recession, we continue to power ahead because of our link with China. So people have become complacent. My worry is that if things are sailing along so well, you then get blindsided by change. So the time of greatest danger comes at the time of greatest success. And we've got to get people to be thinking about what happens if, for example, we get a collapse in China. There's a high level of indebtedness within China. What happens if that Chinese economy goes down? What happens with the onset of driverless vehicles? We need to have far more debate to alert people to these wider issues and get them away from the immediate issues that seem to obsess them very much. In Australia, of the 20 most popular TV programs, 17 are on sport and 3 are on cooking. My current affairs programs are not going to look in.
But you did say that probably it's not the broadcasting, but it's more the narrowcasting. But
yeah.
it has to be a kind of distributed narrowcasting.
Yes.
Because otherwise there is no common wavelength.
No, there's no common wavelength, but
and
there
no
are
quality control of the kind.
No, I agree, but you've also, though, have more opportunities for distribution of information through the internet, through podcasting. I'm now doing more and more work through podcasting, which means that you listen when it's convenient for you, not for when the program is broadcast. So podcasting is a new revolution. So short, sharp programs analysing events. So that is a growth area.
But if you go through the kind of typical current, I'm not saying conventional, government infrastructure in the Commonwealth, there are some distinctions with that. There's a commonalities with 52. How would you see that a government infrastructure can adapt, let's say, adapt to this, ongoingly adapt?
Well, I work with governments, and I don't work with politicians because they're obsessed only with the immediate election and whatever. But I do work with public servants because they are the ones who know they've got to be in for the long haul and doing a lot of work long term. So I work with a lot of those people and just help them, as I say, to think about the unthinkable and have contingency plans in place. It can be done. If you look at, in fact, in Australia, when we had the global financial crisis, what kept Australia afloat is we'd had a very good series of economists and bankers, etc., who just knew how to react, go hard, go fast, go household. So we poured a lot of money into household consumption, giving people tax rebates, etc., and that helped us through that global financial crisis. In Europe, you went the other way. You went for austerity. You started to reduce the expenditure. But you should have been putting the money back into the economy to keep the economy going.
But is it that Australia, in addition to the fact that somehow has a Commonwealth link, or the Commonwealth pattern, the Commonwealth kind of type of way of running its economy and its parliament and all the rest of it, it has a lot of influence, both from China, Japan. So it's a kind of probably even more distinct type of Commonwealth.
Yes, absolutely.
Because of that, because the others are so different.
Well, it's a whole new era that's opening up for Australia and New Zealand.
That's it.
Because traditionally we've been on the edge of the action, right? So in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So Europeans left their rocky outcrop at the western end of the giant Eurasian landmass. The Spanish moved to the Americas, the Portuguese went around Africa, then later on you had the Dutch and the French and the British. So we've had 500 years of the European domination of the world, either by Europe or the daughter, the United States. The argument is that era is coming to an end, and we're seeing now the return of China. You see, 300 years ago, 1/3 of gross domestic product in the world was Chinese. And the China is just returning to where it was. It's been off for a few centuries. It's had a bit of a difficult period for a few centuries. But China is now bouncing back. Japan is already there. And India is now coming on stream. First time ever in world history that you're going to have China, India and Japan all active simultaneously. And Australia, which has always been on the edge of the Atlantic world, so to speak, is now got the first row seat in the Pacific region.
Probably becoming a type of a hub of a kind.
Exactly.
I mean,
absolutely.
These are signals. These are very clearly signals of tomorrow. Well, anyway, since Club of Rome is taking place next week, and we have quite a tradition within the CPTM since before we became CPTM with Alex King and a number of others, yourself, over the years. In fact, the limits to growth even as a symbol, when the manifesto for smart partnership was coined in 1997 in Namibia by everybody else, there was the idea, no, there may be limits, but we're looking to limitless opportunities. So there was an idea that limitless opportunities will be the hot for due to smart partnership. But I'm not very sure now, and that was a signal at that time, that through a smart partnership ethics and win-win and prosper thy neighbor, you might be able to push the limits towards limitless. What do you think, finally, what do you think is a signal of tomorrow, what's happening now?
I think the signal is first moving away from a carbon economy and looking at a new way of doing economic change. When you had Circa here, that's what she was looking at as well. Great work being done in Finland. I think also, as I say, we've got to engender a sense of hope. My worry is that there's too much despair out there, too much thinking about the end of the world. We've really got to be saying, well, look, if you keep thinking about the end of the world, that's what you're going to get. You always get what you think about. So I'm saying we've got to be looking at ways to find new opportunities to do things differently. And so that's what I prefer to focus on. Always focus on the positive rather than just warning people about all the bad things.
But I think is what you're saying, that the only way you can do that, if you are monitoring and
absolutely.
This increase the capability of just doing that, then you can cope with risk and spontaneity. And
so you're monitoring the raw data, you're trying to analyse that data, but also you are monitoring new ideas. So my view is that just as the planet is threatened by the global cancer, humans, cancer always kills its own host, so we are creating a global brain, which is the internet. So we can share ideas at the speed of light around the world. And who knows what new ideas that can help save the world are being generated at this very moment as we sit here in London. Could be happening on the other side of the world, and we will find out about it in the next few minutes. So who knows what new ideas, thanks to the global brain, the internet.
No, absolutely. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for making your contribution on the media at the panel, at our initial panel. Again, we don't know what we call it, this panel, but we will continue this rolling panel until Commonwealth Summit, April, and probably beyond that.
Good. So, excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.